Welcome to Business Focus, or more specifically, Finance Focus. We're going to have a 6-episode series focused on the role of finance in business, how it's changing, why it's changing, and what you can do if you get it right. We're going to touch on a lot of things around investment, driving ROI, getting adoption, vetting the things that you're investing in. And to help me do all of that, I'm joined by two people, returning guest, longtime friend of the show, Ross Sardi, our CEO, First Focus.
Biggest friend of the show.
Only friend of the show, maybe. And Jarrod Morris, CEO and founder of Bolden, which is a company that's focused on digital transformation in the finance space. And maybe we'll get you to do a quick intro as well to set the scene there. But in episode 1 today, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to the technology used in the finance role, what that role done well looks like, accurate forecasting, return on investment, all of that. I think we'll just start with a conversation around why it's important that we talk about this now. Why this moment in time? What's changing?
This is a really critical juncture in time, I think, for all finance professionals. There's no secret that we're all talking about the rise of AI at the moment. And I think that what we should be doing is rising with the robots and putting people at the focus of what it is that we're looking to achieve out of finance. For me, that involves a real shift away from the manual processing of transactions and towards a genuine business partnering opportunity inside of organizations.
We're about to kick off an event series. This episode will come out after that finishes. You're speaking at that event with Jarrod. The whole point of it is the changing role of finance and business, how to drive ROI from your tech spend. Why did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, there was a recent statistic I saw, which is 96% of business goals that were, so they surveyed a bunch of small, mid-sized businesses. 96% of the goals of those businesses this year relied on technology. And so 96%, either primary, I think it was something like 70% was a primary factor. Technology was a primary factor of what the business wanted to achieve this year. And it was something like 30-something%, whatever it was only 4% where their business goals for the year didn't involve technology. And so the interesting part for me was that the increasing amount of that technology spend actually, it's not the IT manager directing that spend or the IT owner or whoever's in charge of the IT function. Technology is becoming more of an enabler across the business. Mm-hmm. And so those decisions around technology investments are generally happening at the CFO, COO type level. And I think there's a real challenge in being able to properly articulate what the ROI is from these. How do I actually understand if this is worth doing? What am I going to expect back across the business? But in finance itself, we've been a big user of technology in finance for a long time ourselves and moving away from a traditional kind of month-end process a long time ago. And I like talking about finance. So there's lots of reasons.
Love numbers. So off the back, we've got the fact that an ever-growing amount of projects are tech-related. Do we know where that number comes up? Like, has that just gone through like a hockey stick curve, or is it actually always been relatively high?
I think the number, I actually had a Gartner study, which I saw, which was that the percentage really ramped up at the point of COVID accelerated the number of businesses that had to become digital first, if you'd like. Mm-hmm. That meant that they had to transform what might have been manual process, might have been an in-person process into digital process. And so then with COVID, then came an increasing ability to automate, AI, things that have really accelerated that. But COVID was the initial kicker. And I think now, the Gartner study was something like 70% of businesses would now be considered sort of digital first, in the sense that they have a strategy which is pretty much, we need to use technology to do X, as a key driver.
Okay, so if, Jarrod, you're dealing with owners in these businesses, 50 to 200 seats maybe, and more of their projects are related to tech spend, but they're not tech experts, what problems are you seeing they need to address? Like, why for you is this a really critical point in time?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. And I think it comes back to people as well. And I don't want to answer a question with a question, but I'm really curious as to whether, Ross, you're seeing these same business owners increasingly aware of how the person supports that process as well. I think to actually answer the question though, Brendan, what we're observing is a desire to curate a technology stack that mandates a single source of data entry as well, and not having business units operate as silos, as disconnected from a finance function as well. Because part of what I've seen time and time again into the businesses that we consult to is the fact that the business units tend to be prioritized because they're the drivers of outcomes inside of the business, and the finance function is sort of left to pick up the pieces of the manual processes by way of people and spreadsheets. And so what we're seeing through this sort of technology adoption is a desire to contemplate that with a view to the entire ecosystem and how that integrates across the stack more generally, with a view to having the person deliver more of the commercial and strategic acumen as opposed to the manual processing of the transaction.
That's the problem, right? Like you've got these either business owners or CFOs or heads of finance who are lumped with this risk and compliance piece often, which means IT. And they're probably increasingly, I guess, inundated with ideas. There's more that they can do with technology than ever before. And yet that's not really their key function. But also I assume that the need to be able to articulate the return, track that return, means that they've got to be using new technology in that space as well, potentially, or processes or whatever, both maybe. So like, is this what you're hearing, that people are just like, where the hell do I start? What do I actually do?
Yeah, I think my experience with people that own the finance function in a business is two major camps. You've got, my job here as the head of finance is to spend as little, make sure that I and the business spend as little as possible on everything, right? And then you've got the other camp, which is my job as the head of finance, is to constantly be looking to invest as much as I can on everything. And it's almost two quite distinct paths. And maybe it's also links to the life cycle of business where they're at, but huge difference in the ones that are looking at this from all right, where do I save money this year, as opposed to where do I invest money this year? And that seems to be driving the conversation a lot.
Can I add a third one into that? Absolutely. I actually think it's how do we resource a plan? And this comes back to why. Like, what is the strategic endeavor of the business, and have we gone and mapped that out by way of strategic plan? And I see the role of finance as being the team that resources and enables that plan. It shouldn't be an either-or scenario, in my opinion. It shouldn't be let's cut the cost or invest. It should be, well, what do we actually require to resource the execution of this plan?
Yeah, so the reason really we've got you involved is because you've grown this business from, I don't know, much smaller to much bigger.
Very precise.
Thank you. Yeah. It wasn't so big. Now it's a lot bigger. I'd say you came in with 50 odd staff. I mean, that's an easier number to work with. We're now probably getting close to 340 shortly, I would say. So the lever for that, the driver for that, the thing that we did differently, as far as I understand it, was the forecasting, the accurate 3-year forecasting, like just ridiculous regimen behind the ownership and the updating of those numbers, and that they were accurate.
Yeah, but that being able to have a fantastic forecast meeting starts well before that point, to have you talked about the single point of entry, to have all these feed-in bits to have accurate data, the sales pipeline, the current work in progress, the staffing, the projected staffing, all the bits that everyone else has to keep up to date, and make sure that all that data is coming together, so that I can sit there with my forecast and go, yeah, I've got a good view and I understand what's going on. So yes, important, but it's a business decision to actually set yourself up to be able to have a good forecast. And it is a decision. And I think that's what, from my perspective, people, I mean, how many times you hear, our sales guys don't update their opportunities? Well, it's a decision. You can actually make sure that it's...
But they do.
Yeah, right?
Can relate.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's a decision that a business has to make if they want the ability to forecast well.
So in that case, then, the ability to forecast doesn't start with the CFO, it starts with the CEO? Because you've got to be able to mandate and set that culture, that expectation, right?
It's I would say it's a cultural decision of the executive team. Mm-hmm. It's not one person's job, I would agree.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a symbiotic relationship. Like, the CFO is often described as the co-pilot for the CEO as well. And I think that is inherently true.
Okay. So, all right, we putting a bow around that. Why are we talking about this? Because A, it's bloody important. 2, Technology is a key driver of business success, and almost every spend now relates to that. And the CFOs that have responsibility for the IT budget often have more opportunities to do more things, but they often need strategic and managerial assistance to nail that. So that's why we're talking about it. Let's talk about what best practice looks like. And we just touched on forecasting a bit, but I think that's probably a good place to start if you don't know what the return is going to be. And we'll talk more about the return piece and how to make sure that happens next episode. But if you want to be able to actually present a solid plan, if you want to understand cash flow, all that kind of stuff, right, you're going to be able to forecast well. So who wants to talk to me about the art of accurate forecasting? You've touched a bit on have the data. What else? It can't be that simple.
Look, I mean, it's data. It's the right models and understanding of the key economic levers in your business and the variables that are underneath those. I think that to be able to accurately forecast, it's like I said, it's a team effort and something that I think is important for the financial, let's say, financial literacy of more than just the finance team needs to be high. Like, it's not just get your opportunities in, it's the why and because and therefore, right? And so I think that what I see work really well for us is that it's finance. As I said, finance is a job that's that lives outside just the finance team. And like you said, I think before, the finance team's not just there to kind of make the numbers add up after the fact. I don't necessarily think we should also be doing things to make the finance department's life easier either. It's not, because sometimes I've seen that as well. Finance wants our process to be perfect, so everyone else has to do something. That's not what I'm saying either. But it's everyone's coming together with a single view on we will be more successful if we understand where we're going, understand what we need to get there, understand how much we can invest this week, this month, this year, and really mapping out the success of that.
I think I could attest to the fact that when that forecasting is at the heart of the business, essentially, that each department, certainly me now, the accuracy of the market budget spend, marketing budget spend, the accuracy around opportunity, probability, timing, both sign off, go live, it just starts to be in your DNA. So I think that focus drives better business outcomes throughout the teams.
Well, yeah, it's back to, for us, the big thing is lining up staffing capacity with work, and it's ultimately it's better customer experience as well, because if you have a mismatch there, one way you're going to end up losing money, the other way you're going to end up with very unhappy customers.
Yeah, you just pinched the word that I was going to use. Like, for me, it starts with the capacity to forecast, right? And it's this idea that you can enable technology solutions inside of your existing processes to free up the capacity of a finance team to go and partner with the business, so that it's very much a conversation about how do we actually deliver that top-down budget? How do we operationalize that as a plan? I've always coached the businesses that I support to start with the decision that they need to make front of mind. And then what are the data sets that we need to enable those decisions? How can we automate the preparation of that data as much as possible, so the time spent is not in transacting, it's actually in delivering the insight and the analysis, which comes back to this idea of ultimately executing on the plan. So what's the point of an accurate forecast if you've deviated miles from your plan? I think accuracy really needs to be born out of this idea that you've got a plan that you're executing against. And for me, that's the power of the forecast.
And I think the other thing for me is think of it as a spectrum. You've got data, you've got information, and you've got insight. And what you want delivered is insight. Yeah. You need great data, yes, but what you don't want from a finance team is, here's the data.
Go do something with it.
Right?
Yeah.
Not
what
even,
does it mean?
Here's the information, which means, okay, I've looked at the data and I've deduced something, but it's the insights. Then what? Now what? So I think that ability for a finance team to deliver insight to department heads and people that can then do something with that information is where the value is, rather than here's your report. Here's how much money you made last month.
I'm at risk of overdoing the point a little bit here with reference to the why and the strategic plan. But I think to that end, Ross, I see the role of finance as being able to preempt those questions as well.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can do that is if you have the capacity to actually go and scrutinize the data again as it relates to that plan and preempt the question that's ultimately coming from a board or an executive. I was always coached to have a level of detail up my sleeve in finance, but what that enables is that ability to preempt the question that will inevitably come. And you can only answer that if you're across the plan.
So presumably to actually have a forecast that's worth anything, you need to have some really clear targets, whether it's profitability, revenue, whatever, and also, like you say, clear insights, what you want to take away from it. So yeah, where does it start, and what should you be wanting to know in a services business, in your case, to get from that? Obviously, you said staffing capacity, profitability, what else?
Look, a managed service provider is complex in the sense that it's a shared services model underneath, and a lot of what we're selling is often a price per user, which is quite separated from the it's not price per hour anymore. So there's lots of different things that we're trying to combine there to get from a customer paying price per user for their support, but also price per outcome for their project, and price per hour for their ad hoc work, and price per for a product when they're buying. So we got lots of different models going on, all that come together to cost base, which is often quite divorced from the sale. So for us, it's trying to understand, that it's very easy to suddenly have those things go out of sync, I guess you could say, or where you realize you're not making money anymore. Very different from, I've got something and I sell it for 10% more or 20, 30% more than what I bought it for, and here you go. You need a really good handle on your numbers if you're on a shared service type model, and your sale price is not linked to that whatsoever.
Right. But they become your levers, don't they? Because I don't think that your vision will have changed materially. Like, you're still a privately held company. Profit is still an aspiration, as it is for most businesses. And really, if you're quite specific about that endeavor, I think everything you've just discussed becomes the lever in that equation.
Yeah.
And so when you're building out these models, they become the inputs, right? And then you sort of empower the business units to be across those inputs. And we do a lot of work in taking what is a top-down budget, which is typically sort of the board or executive level mandate, and then working with the business unit heads to reconcile the bottoms up to make sure that we can actually go and deliver that. And that's a lot about that sort of financial acumen as attached to the commercial endeavor that you spoke about.
I got a couple more questions in this space. I don't want to go into the tech stack yet, the best way to do it, how much is okay to be manual, that kind of stuff. We're going to do that in episode 3. I know you've got lots of thoughts around, curated stack versus kind of ERP or whatever. So that'll be interesting. But I want to ask you one more question about, I'll park the other question for now. The question I want to ask you is, how do you bake in unknowns? Like, if, for example, COVID kicked in, inflation went through the roof. I'm sure a year or two out from that, you hadn't picked inflation. You can do things like price rises you'll have, assume 3% wage growth, whatever. How prepared do you have to be to change things up, to shift from the model, and how do you do your best to account for that?
Well, I know what you're supposed to do is model all the different, your best case, worst case scenarios. That's not necessarily been our approach so far. Our approach has really been we don't go more than a week without reviewing it. Now, that probably is a frequency that's higher than most businesses. I think by the time you wait for month end, close month end, then for us that's too delayed. And so rather than planning for the unknown, it's review constantly. And so, stuff in a week will change, but not change to the point where you can't make a decision or a couple of decisions that allow you to react to that change. So it's the constant review. It's not letting the underlying data become stale. So it's, you would know it's opportunities must be updated every Tuesday afternoon at the very, very latest, so that Wednesday morning the forecast update can happen. Ideally you want them to update in real time, but at least you have no opportunity should be without review for more than a week. Because as long as you have the most everyone's best guess as of today. And that's what it is. It is a guess. But as long as you have everyone's best guess as of today, you can make the best decision with that information. And that's how we would react, I guess. Rather than planning for a bunch of unknowns, it's just constant.
Have the data that allows you to pivot or change or whatever you've got to do.
Yeah, and you're not having to kind of zigzag heaps and react and then re-react and stuff when you're going weekly, because you can make small enough incremental decisions, or at least go, yeah, I'm going to actually hold off on that hire, or I'm going to just, you know what, maybe we need to do this instead, or just actually let's watch out for that next week. You know, you can do small stuff when you're doing it quick and at regular enough intervals. If you wait too long, then you have to make big decisions.
Yeah. Okay.
I now have to make 5 people redundant, or I now have, you know, that's too long.
It's a good soundbite. Thank you. It's good that I like that one.
I think the holy grail that is real-time reporting is actually what makes finance fun, because that conversation lends itself to more of that commercial endeavor. I think you're right, Ross, about the frequency. Like, that is really critical. But being able to have a conversation about how to pivot and accepting the challenge of the pivot as well, because I don't know too many boards that are going to compromise on the budget that they've already signed up to. And so the challenge for the executive then becomes, well, how do we still achieve what we'd set out to achieve despite this macroeconomic impact on the forecast? And so it shouldn't be an excuse to shift the goalposts. It really should be the opportunity to come together and have a fun conversation about how to pivot and actually do what humans do better than the technology, and sort of make those decisions.
There you go. Finance can be fun. There you go.
I still don't believe it, but fair enough. Speaking to the audience, got nothing. My question would be for you: have you got a good example or a case study where, you know, you've worked with a business, you've fundamentally changed that finance function to be real time, forward looking, less month end, and the impact it's had on that business?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of how Bolden was born, to be honest, which is my business, because I got a real passion for this stuff as well. And so there's probably a few examples that come to mind, but the ones that seem to energize me the most are grounded in growth ambition. And certainly what I've come to appreciate of late is that growth can sort of be achieved in 2 ways. And I should discern growth in revenue versus growth in profit, which are 2 very different things. So be clear on that goal. But we've got the more organic growth path, which is about how to increase sales potentially, versus the inorganic growth path, which is by acquisition. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of at the moment, is businesses growing through acquisition, and this technology enablement really supporting that pathway, because of the fact that you're trying to, and I know that this is the cliche, but realize the synergies of that acquisition as well. And so having a culture that's built around tech enablement and having a stack that enables the growth through those inorganic pathways becomes a bit of an enabler in that regard.
That's a really interesting topic to cover, which I hadn't planned, but thank you. What unique challenges do, you know this, 13 soon, 12 now, 13, 14 acquisitions in, what unique challenges do those acquisitions bring from a forecasting and finance perspective?
Yeah, I mean, our due diligence process is largely built around building a forecast.
All right.
You know, it's the key deliverable of due diligence is, here's the forecast of what I think I'm buying. So yeah, it's underlies that absolutely. I mean, pretty much the way we were introduced, we started doing work together, was because we're having this increasing challenge of forecasting and consolidation of all these entities, and because we are integrating fast, it means you're in flux for that period of time, and we were looking for a technology solution to improve that, and hence the introduction to Jarrod. But yeah, that's as I said, forecasting for us is an essential part of due diligence. I think people, it's back to this first conversation, you can look at due diligence as I'm here to find everything that's wrong and come at it from the risk and compliance angle. That's an important part of due diligence, but really what you're actually trying to do in DD is go, what's my future maintainable earnings of this business? What's my opportunity to make that even better? And look at it with growth lens.
Just on that, Ross, I will often tell businesses that the finance capability becomes a huge driver of enterprise value. because the ability for somebody to be able to do due diligence on you in the first instance is critically important, but to be able to do that in an efficient way that sells a narrative of that business in more of an expedited way too, I think becomes a real driver of EV.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. We look at the businesses we look at, those that have messy financials and they have to go away and try and work out data and versus, yep, here you go, is a huge difference.
It just gives you confidence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it there for episode 1, but you've heard it here. The role of finance is changing. Month end is dead. And if you want your business to be high value, get finance right. Episode 2, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a lot about the ROI gap, how your tech investment can actually realize a return, how to actually map out that return in terms of forecasting, and then how to hit it. See you for the next episode.